Up until Alexis visiting Finchdon Manor, where I spent my teens, my late teens and early 20s, I'd never seen a singer / songwriter performer up close in the flesh as a human being and seeing what that actually was. So, of course, I'd seen Top of the Pops, so I'd seen people prancing about on that. I'd been to live shows, I'd seen The Move in the late 66. They were fucking amazing, but I didn't think of them as human beings. They were a band, they had microphones, they were on a stage. You know? I saw the Manfreds and the Yardbirds, who were fucking amazing, you know, amazing bands. I saw Cream. On the same bill as the Jeff Beck Group with Rod Stewart on vocals and John Mayall's Blues Breakers. So, yeah, I saw lots of bands, but they were bands. Yeah. I hadn't seen what happened that evening, which was when a grizzled, middle-aged man in a floral shirt walked into a crowded room no bigger than this and just fished a guitar out of a case, strapped it on, matter-of-factly, and opened his mouth and sang.
Wow.
That's a new experience, that he's somebody who's just driven a car here, he's somebody who's having tea with the chief, and now he's just put a guitar on and he started singing. No microphone, no nothing. It's just sheer, unadulterated charisma and talent and human connection, which he had in spades, so that we all felt kind of drawn into his world instantly. I went, whatever that is, I want to be one of them. And, you know, Alexis was also a broadcaster at the time. He had shows on Radio 1, so again, he was somebody who knew his music and who introduced music to listeners that they hadn't heard before.
Yeah.
So again, there's that side of who he was.
Inspired you from a broadcasting.
From that point of view as well, you know. Couldn't be a better set of footsteps. So I didn't want to be Mick Jagger. Not that I could ever have pulled that off in 1,000 years, but I wanted to be the man who inspired Mick Jagger.
Yeah.
You know, who was somebody who worked away behind the scenes. He wasn't Tony Blackburn, he was Alexis Korner. You know, he wasn't John Mayall, he was Alexis Korner. And I thought that was such a cool thing to be.
Yeah, and everyone at the time wanted to play with him. I mean, you only have to look at the list of people that played with him. I mean, two-thirds of Cream at least played with him.
Yeah.
Jack and Ginger.
Yeah.
He was such a phenomenal musician. So it's certainly a good place to get a good source of inspiration from.
Yeah, totally. And his nurturing kindness towards other musicians was a big part of that. So at the time, those famous people played with him, they weren't famous.
Yeah.
So he was nurturing them as unknown talented people, giving them a chance to play in his band so that they would find their feet and then go on to greater things. And he did it with Free, endless people. And when he got people like Champion Jack Dupree over the Big Bill Broomsey stayed on in their living room floor at the Corners flat. It was always this thing of bringing talent in front of people, and that's what was behind those people who were later famous, having started in Blues Incorporated. And in a very small way, he did that for us too. So, as he was leaving, I said, Alexis, do you think you could possibly get us a microphone in London? Because at the moment we're just singing in our kind of band into a plastic tape recorder mic taped to a broomstick, and it doesn't sound great, and we can't get the vocals up over the guitars and drums. And he said, well, how much have you got, lads? And he said, well, we've saved up, we've got a £5. He said, I'll tell you what, give me your £5 and I'll go and see what I can do. And 2 weeks later, in the post, a brand new Shure Unidyne 3 arrives, packaged up. You know, it must have cost at least £50, even the money of those days.
Sure.
But the difference that made to our music making as an amateur band, that you could suddenly hear the vocals over the drummer, which, unless you had a feedback rejecting microphone with a decent quality diaphragm, you know, amateur bands never had. You always had your vocals drowned by the drums.
So you could put yourself forward as a more professional act at the very least, I guess.
I think it was just we could develop as musicians once we could hear everything in balance. he knew that microphone was a key element for any singer-songwriter working with other musicians to actually grow with them and be able to not compete but hold their own against the guys that just want to jam 12-bar blues all night. You know, well, if you can say, yeah, but why don't we do this song?
Yeah.
So I think very perceptive of him, and he showed great kindness from then on, and always did to Finch.
So he became a good friend as well after.
Yeah, when he died, it was such a blow.
Would you suggest that your sort of initial break came when you met Ray Davies, perhaps?
Yes, but again, Alexis played his part in that.
Yeah.
The band Cafe Society I was with, we had a residency every other Tuesday at the Troubadour Club in Earl's Court, and we had persuaded Alexis to come and be our guest artist for our night that night that Ray happened to show up. So Ray shows up, and there's Alexis Korner playing for these guys, and obviously friends with them, and so he hits it off with Alexis, who knows him anyway, and then Alexis persuades Ray Davies to get up and sing a few songs, and you know, that really helped cement the thing that the night he came down to see us, he saw these guys at least as serious, you know, and I think that really helped him treat us seriously. Although in the demos, we went into Conch to record some demos.
Did Ray produce these demos? Or?
Well, for the demos, this was just like a screen test type thing. So we just went in with our guitars, stood in front of some microphones, and went through our repertoire. That's all it was. But it was recorded, and I've got a copy of the recording, and in it, on one of the songs, you hear Ray going on the talkback, who's singing the low harmony? And we were going, is that, oh, that's Tom. Yeah, it's me. And then you just hear the low harmony disappear out of the mix. So it kind of set the template for the way our future relationship was going to evolve.
Yeah. How did you first come to be involved with Peter Gabriel?
Complete accident. It happened at the height of TRB's 15 Minutes of Fame, which lasted from kind of the end of 77 to the middle of 79. And at the height of our fame, Harvey Goldsmith had promised us that we could have Hammersmith Odeon on Christmas Eve 1978, and because we were managed by Pink Floyd's manager Steve O'Rourke, Harvey wanted to keep the right side of it, you know, so he said, yeah, of course you can. And then, as December crept around, we saw that Peter Gabriel was doing 8 nights solid at Hammersmith Odeon, including Christmas Eve.
And those Christmas Eve shows were quite famous, weren't they, I suppose?
No, I don't think so. I think I didn't have any awareness of it previously. It's just that we'd really enjoyed playing Hammersmith Odeon for 2 nights earlier in the year.
Yeah.
I said, this is my dream venue. Harvey, could we possibly come back and do it on Christmas Eve? That would be just a lovely thing to do for the fans. And so he'd said yes. And then he'd gone, when Peter said, can I do 8 nights? He said, sure, yeah, no problem. And then when Steve O'Rourke calls up Harvey Goldsmith and said, you promised that to my band. Harvey goes, oh, well, maybe Peter and Tom could meet up and see if they could do a show together that night. So he arranged an introduction. I went down the train to Bath and went to visit Peter and his wife and their little kids, and stayed overnight. And we talked about life, the universe and everything, and got on like a house on fire. He was with us exactly the same age, so we'd had exactly the same musical influences. You know, that kind of middle-class background on one hand, but also being great fans of the blues, of Traffic, Spencer Davis Group, Manfred Mann, Roxy Music. We loved all that stuff. So we went, let's do a show together then. We'll do a charity show, and we'll notify both our fan clubs in advance so they can buy tickets. We'll make all the tickets the same price from the front of the stalls to the back of the circle. First come, first served. And we'll put together a special band just for the one night. Why don't we do that? And we'll write some songs. Let's write some songs together. And then I'll sing on your songs, and you sing on my songs as well. And I murdered Salisbury Hill at that. Murdered it. But in fact, as I came off the stage, I heard one of Peter Gabriel's roadies saying to another one, said, that Tom Robbins said, can he play bass? Can he fuck? But it was an amazing night that we had, and we did write a couple of songs especially for that show, and we put together a band with Peter on synthesizer, TRB's guitarist Danny Custer on guitar, me on bass, Paul Jones from Manfred Mann on harmonica, Andy Mackay from Roxy Music on sax.
Sounded like a great band.
Yeah, it was a great band. We had Phil Collins on drums and Elton John on piano.
Right.
And we didn't record it.
There's got to be a bootleg somewhere.
In those days, you know, it was so much harder to do recordings. There weren't mobile phones. There weren't even recording Walkman in '78. So actually, it wasn't. You would have really had to snuck in a little viewer or something with tape. So it wasn't
2-inch tape.
Yeah, it wasn't like today. So as far as I know, there's no recordings of that. But anyway, given my given my treatment of Salisbury Hill, then I'm actually quite relieved. And the Enemy review for it the week after said, "One sings, the other doesn't."
Isn't that lovely?
Well, it was a famous musical, wasn't it? Yeah. One sings, the other doesn't. It was fair enough too. I couldn't really sing till the mid '80s, but I'd been emboldened to try my hand as a vocalist after seeing the Sex Pistols.
Yeah, was that another sort of seminal point?
Totally seminal moment.
And where was that Sex Pistols gig? Which one was that?
100 Club.
100 Club, yeah.
100 Club, yeah. The early 100 Clubs in '76.
76?
Krakatoa.
Supported by Bazooka Joe, maybe?
No, Krakatoa was supporting.
Okay.
And didn't have much luck with the Sex Pistols audience. But the thing was, in Cafe Society, I wasn't much of a singer, I wasn't much of a songwriter. So I got together with two guys who I thought were. And actually, I was just like the catalyst in the band. I'd do the arrangements, I'd sing a backing vocal, harmonies and stuff, and that's why Ray took my voice out of the mix, because that was my role. And it was only after I saw Rotten I went, well, if he can do it, I can do it, you know. It doesn't matter whether you sing in tune or not.
No.
And if you listen to the early TRB recordings, you'll find that amply put into practice. So some of those live recordings, like I'm Glad to Be Gay and Don't Take No for an Answer, it's not brilliant. But it's got spirit, which is the main thing.
Yeah.
That's what I realised, was it's got to be truthful, it's got to be real, it's got to be loud, it's got to be passionate, but the actual musicianship's secondary. It actually took me about 3 or 4 gigs to realise that my old mate from Finchton, Danny Custo, far from being just a make-weight to fill in so we had a guitarist, was actually fucking brilliant. You know, it's something... Danny, he's learned to play in the interim, you know, the last 5 years. So... So there you go.
Yeah, every article that I read about you, Tom Robinson, it always mentions that you are a political activist. Are you a political activist, or is it just so much that you sing about things, you write about things that you're passionate about?
Well now, what's the honest answer to that? I didn't form a band with the view to thinking this is the best way to change the world. I know, I'll form a band and go out and change people's minds. It wasn't that way round. It was, I wanted to be in a band, I wanted to play music, I wanted audiences to like what I did. I wanted paying audiences to come and see me ponce about on a stage. You know, that was the motivation. But having grown up bisexual in the 60s and thought I was the only queer kid in my class, in my school, in my village, you know, in Essex, in the whole fucking world. Nothing I heard off the radio from pop music or magazines or TV or books or anything gave me any other story than Boy Meets Girl.
Yeah, okay.
It was Boy Meets Girl, Boy Meets Girl, and it was only in 1972, 73 when I stumbled across David Bowie's music. I'd seen articles about him. I thought, well, that looks a bit poncy, you know, fishnet stockings and dyed hair and painted fingernails. Oh, I don't think I can be doing with that. And then I heard the music and it blew my head off, you know. And the Hunky Dory album, I went, oh my God, this is music about me! Finally! Music of my life! And so I just said to myself then, if I ever get the chance to do that for somebody else in the course of trying to make a career in music, then I will pass that on, because that has transformed my life. And if I can do a fraction of that for somebody else, then I'll thrive. So actually I'd come out as soon as I moved to London in 73, so I never had a possibility of a career in music in the closet, because I was already out. So you can't go back in once you're out, although a few people have tried. So I became a gay activist while in Cafe Society, and that was on the side from my music career. I had a music career, signed to Ray Davies, him producing our album, hoping to make it and not making it. And on the side, I was turning up at gay benefits and singing protest songs and doing time on Gay Switchboard as a volunteer. And it was only after the Pistols I went, hold on, you just bring the two sides of your life together. But one of the tenets of gay liberation that was the little scales falling from your eyes. The Gay Liberation Front was a very political organisation, and they said, you can't divide your freedom. You can't say women's place is in the home, but gay men ought to be allowed to do what they want. You can't say, let's not have any more immigrants in this country, because the same people who hate us are the same people who hate them. We have common enemies. The police are using the sus laws to beat up gay men in Earl's Court, but they're also using those same sus laws in Notting Hill, in Brixton. So Rock Against Racism was a natural thing to support.
Yeah.
Because it's...
incredible cause.
And it just sprung out of, where I was coming from. Mm-hmm. And also, it didn't make sense to be a quote-unquote gay band, You're limiting your audience, and... it isn't just about that. You either live in a free and a fair society or you don't. So in that case, if you're having a career in music, anything you can do within that sphere of influence to help push towards the things you care about, then you will. And TRB had a large number of songs that were engaging with what was going on around us. But we also had songs about my brother Martin, about wishing I had a grey Cortina, about driving down the motorway to London with the sunset coming up. Too Good to Be True was about Danny Costello living in his bedsit. So you need a full range. The best protest singers, Stevie Wonder, for instance, Living for the City, you couldn't ask for a better protest song. But he also wrote, Isn't She Lovely? Bob Marley, No Woman, No Cry, but also jamming, Billy Bragg. You've got to have songs about humanity and life that engage with your listeners. You can't push people away by shouting at them the whole time. But if you do have an audience and you do have an ongoing career, you have a duty, I think, to tell the truth as you see it. And you see someone like Kate Tempest, who is doing love songs now, but calling it like it is, not trying to kind of shirk truth-telling. So that's all I tried to do, I guess. Mm-hmm. Has that covered it?
I guess so. I'm just concerned that it's 5 to...
Oh, 5 to rehearsal time.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's okay. Can you tell me if it's okay with you?
Yep.
Right.